emotional aspect should be taken into account in a culture that is uplifting, not only the rational aspect. I feel that many companies leave aside the emotional aspect, and this is a great deficit.
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
And I do conference worldwide. I speak in front of thousands of people. And I put that example all the time. And so look, and that's why there's 7-star hotel. That's why they understand. So what happened is that when I book the reservation, they ask you your name and they ask you your day of birth as part of the reservation. Yeah. So the system already is telling them they have birthday. It's already embedded in the system. I didn't tell them I'm going to have a dinner with my girlfriend because it's the birthday. It's not like that. Say, okay, what's your name? Blah. What's the name of the person? Date of birth of you. That goes in the reservation form to actually eat there. So they have this data. So the system already knew that was her birthday. And then it goes past to the chef. And the chef making a special, a very high-end cuisine. It's not like a big cake. It's something very tiny for 2-3 people, but very well presented, very high quality cake with gold things and things like that. Amazing. But Bruno, I think that's why these companies have different approach. They treat the client in a different way. Guess what happened? Because of that gesture, I have eaten every time that I go to Dubai. I eat in that hotel. I have eaten already in all the restaurants. We already eaten in for one tiny cake that they gave me the first time. Because you are not telling the story to everyone.
Very important. But I agree with this approach. And it's because the company have been generous. They didn't think the cake will be costly to them. They thought about the customer, you as a customer, and keep you as a customer, not only for that night or that evening, but also forever. But
Yes.
the spirit was good. The spirit
It was like 10 years ago, I think 10 years ago. And
Very
we will never forget that. And these are companies that have this approach. Now, let's talk about business, yeah?
Yes.
Because even when you were talking about the cake or the biscuit that they give you with the coffee, right? It's a very high perceived value for the client at a very low cost.
Very low cost. They might buy the biscuit.
When it comes to business, the biscuit can be nice, can be well presented, can be very tiny, but it's a high perceived value for the client.
Yes.
But it's actually a very low cost. What is expensive? Customer retention. What is expensive? Acquire new clients. All this is expensive.
Very expensive.
You create, so the company that have this approach that you're describing, actually, when you do the numbers, you see a lot of profitability and a lot of less resistance. The other day in one of these interviews, one of the entrepreneurs asked me, Harry, look, what are the fastest way to achieve from point A to point B? And I'm telling him, so fired up, I'm telling him, well, the fastest way to reach from point A to point B is the straight line. And the guy told me, Harry, is the path of less resistance. Think about the river, yeah? So sometimes we want to achieve a goal, and just because we think it's close, we take the path that is more resistant. And this is what we find out with those companies, that they don't have this approach that you're talking about. Then you find a lot of resistance everywhere you go. You find resistance in the customer acquisition process. You find resistance in the customer retention process. You find resistance in the employees, right? Because at the end of the day, the employee is also is having this view as well. But the question I want to ask you, Bruno, for all of the multimillionaires that we have interviewed this very podcast, more than 500 so far, I'm asking some of them, if you had to start all over again, what would you do different? What would be that bit that you would do different? Almost everybody give me the same answer. They're telling me hurry culture. If I knew that this business is gonna take me 100 times more work and it's gonna be more harder than what I thought, I would put more attention to culture. We put more attention and more time in the diversity, in treat my employees well, in treat my clients well, in create that culture or that values, that because at the end of the day it's that group of people that it will have an impact in what the company is going to look like in the future. So my question to you, Bruno, is, in your opinion, is culture that important for a startup as well as for the big corporation?
Yes.
Or you think that is something that is not important? The most important thing is to make money and to achieve the numbers.
Very interesting question. I want to mention, for example, the subtitle of my book is Main Principle for the Human-Oriented Enterprise. Principles are related to culture. Some call this principle values. Values is a very important factor in culture. So I believe that there is a famous thought leader that observed culture eats strategy for breakfast. So this means that culture is the most important thing, and culture, you have values embedded into this culture. What are values? Are long-lasting beliefs that help people act in certain ways. For example, compassion could be a good value. Generosity could be a good value. If you see the leading companies that are human-oriented, they are oriented on people, on profit, and on the planet, they have the best value, noble value, lofty values. So I agree with culture, but I want to say that when you have a culture that is foster generosity, foster compassion, in this cultural environment, only relationships that are win will succeed, will prosper. When you talk about resistance, about thinking about this, I'm finishing my next book that is also about change. And what I observe with change, that in some cases the most important factor of resistance is that people needs are not addressed in a very effective way. You try to force change, you try to introduce change in a forceful way.
So force an outcome, right?
You don't care about people. You want to, for example, change the software system in the company, and these people have been using this software for ages. And you try to change the system without offering any training, any mentoring, any coaching. Well, this will be unlikely to succeed. So I agree with culture, and culture implies that when you have a culture that fosters good values, for example, generosity, gratitude, appreciation, kindness, this culture will bring about what I mentioned before, a psychological safe workplace, but also bring about a much more compassionate customer service. You will treat customers in the way that they want to be treated. You won't treat them as objects or elements to generate profit. You won't treat employees as part of the machinery of this company that can be replaced when they fail. Instead, you will treat every stakeholder as flesh and bone human being, that they have some fear, they have expectation, they have dreams, they have needs that are not only economic but also emotional needs. They need to be appreciated, they need to be supported, they need to be treated in a compassionate way. And also, this type of culture implies that you try to guide your decisions to bring about the well-being of everyone involved. You try to avoid, as I mentioned, these decisions that bring about win-lose agreements where one wins at the expense of others. So culture is key, and one of the most important elements of culture, I see some companies, for example, that not only they describe their culture in the website, but also they infuse these values that are part of the culture with training. So employees, when it's onboarding process, this employee will be trained on the main values, how they put this value into practice. They will be providing this employee with some example. For example, if one of the values is customer orientation, they will provide this employee on how you can make in practice this effective. So how you treat customers in a very focused way, trying to focus on their needs, try to delight them whenever possible, but also they will take into account that the whole human being. This type of culture that fosters lofty values take into account, because what you see in practice, for example, I see many companies, they focus only on the rational aspect of a stakeholder, for example, employees. I see many companies that the employees cannot express their emotions even in an effective way. Emotions are outside the workplace because they consider that this emotion can be disrupted. For example, if the employee feel a bit sad or despondent because they have some problems at home, or they got a divorce, or they have some health problems, these employees are ignored. Any emotion that is brought to the workplace is ignored because it's like they didn't exist. But we are emotional beings, and we have very important emotional needs. Instead, I see another category of companies that try to bring about some services like counseling services. For example, some companies like the Big Four, Deloitte, and others, they have counseling services free for employees because we can have, for example, some mental health problems or emotional problems, and we are, before being employees, we are human beings. The same with customers. Companies that have a very important culture, a very uplifting culture, they will understand that customers, they do not only buy products, they buy and they are connected to the emotion that they feel when they buy products. So I want to explain this in a very simple way. Companies with a high culture understand that customers want to feel well before buying the product, during the buying process, and after buying the product. Many companies only try to make the customer feel well, satisfied, positive emotion like happiness and so on, only when they buy the product. And then they forget about this customer. No, when the customer bought the product and they got this product at home, they might feel a bit worried. They might feel a bit anxious. They're not sure if they bought the right product or not. A company that has a very uplifting culture will contact this customer to see if everything goes well, will listen to any customer complaint, will address any issue, for example, replacing the product, refunding the money, or recommending a new product. And these are the companies that win customers because these customers, when their emotions are acknowledged, because emotions are connected to customer satisfaction, they are more likely to be loyal. This means that they will feel positive emotion toward this company on a regular basis, and they become ambassadors of this brand. This means that they become the customer that recommend and promote this company's product unconditionally on social media and elsewhere. Instead, when the company dismiss this customer emotion before the buying process, during the buying process, and after the buying process, this customer might feel utilized. They might feel manipulated. They might feel that the company only contacted them to sell product for them, but they don't care about their own need, the customer needs. So this means that emotional aspect should be taken into account in a culture that is uplifting, not only the rational aspect. I feel that many companies leave aside the emotional aspect, and this is a great deficit.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.